Now we're ready to continue with part 2 for Drawing Challenge 1, the simple floor plan. We're going to take a look at design development. So we're going to look at working with annotations as well as the variety of ways that we can develop our drawing geometry, and then we'll be able to proceed with part 3. So the first thing, after we've created our basic drawing setup settings, we've developed our annotation styles, as you can see here, including for our leaders. We want to make sure that we set the correct or the target annotation scale. We set this drawing up for 1/4 inch. Now, we want to make sure we set it here, but we also want to restrict the annotations that we see just for the scale selected. So right now it is off. Right now you'll be able to see all sorts of annotations for a variety of scales. To avoid the confusion, what I'll do here is simply turn it to blue or turn it on so that you only see the annotations for this particular scale. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and start drawing, right? If you do a zoom or Z enter, A enter, this is zoom all. As I zoom out a little bit more, you can start to see the extent of the visible grid area, right? This is the area that represents our sheet size for our target scale. So our drawing has to take place somewhere within those drawing limits, right? Here's the example. I'm going to go ahead and close that for now. And then also, let me take a look here at our sample sheet. Okay? Now, if you take a look at that information in the corner there, you can see that we need to start from a very specific point. All right? And we're talking about that inside bottom left-hand corner. That shows an absolute coordinate, right, of 7 feet, 6 feet. So just a quick review on how to input, right, your coordinates. With the variety of ways, you can just do direct input, just place it anywhere. You can use absolute, you can use relative, you can use polar, or any combination thereof. So this would be a good time for me to show you the difference in the way that you can use just the command line entry as opposed to using dynamic input. So to activate dynamic input, use F12. And you don't see anything right now, but you can see how this turns on or off. So F12 at any time could be turned on and off. And you only see that dynamic input box once you start doing something. So let's take a look now at the draw panel here. There's commands here that aren't readily available or visible unless I pin the draw panel to stay open, right? This is where you'll find construction lines and rays. Now I like using construction lines because they remind me of hand drafting. Now here you can see the heads-up display box now. Okay, you can see the X coordinate is highlighted right now, and then to the right of that is the Y that forms the coordinate pair. Down below at the command line, you see even more information, right? You see the options within the brackets. Now, if you look where it says specify a point, or, and then you see that downward arrow, use the downward arrow in your on your keyboard here to access those very same commands. So now look at this. If I turn off dynamic input, okay, if I turn off dynamic input, let me cancel and turn it off. Now, when I activate construction line again, you can still see those options, right? So it's really a matter of how you like to work. Okay, I'm going to leave my dynamic input off for the moment, and let me show you here. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a vertical and horizontal construction line because that's how we're going to lay out the drawing. If you hover over any of these commands, not only will you get a tooltip, but you'll get an expanded tooltip. This is really helpful when you're trying to learn all of these commands. As a matter of fact, you should learn all of the draw and all of the modify commands before next week. Okay, this is a great way to learn them. You can also click on the command and then hit the F1 key, and you'll get context-sensitive help, which means if you're in a command, it'll provide you the help window for that command. Okay, it's a very easy way to learn the software. Okay, so I'm going to create a vertical line first, so type V and then enter. Now I'm prompted to specify a point. In order to get that coordinate, what I'm going to do is use absolute coordinate entry method, which is just specifying the x, comma, y. So here, 7 feet, comma, 6 feet. Okay? Enter, and that's where the line went. Now, to cancel the command, you can hit the escape key. When you hit enter or the space bar, you go right back into the previous command. Escape to cancel, you could also use right click and do the selection from there. If you have other commands that you recently used, just go a little bit lower and you'll see recent input. Right? So those are the variety of ways that you can access the command. Now I'm going to use H for horizontal, and once again 7 feet, comma, 6 feet. So there's my corner point. Now what I'm going to do is, if you take a look at the drawing, to review the dimensions of the drawing, we have 20 feet interior to interior and 32 feet. So if I go back to my model here, I'm going to offset by using O, enter. Now also, notice this. If I escape and start this again, you'll see predictive text, right? So if I type O, notice the pop-up that comes up, right? This is really great because this is a way that if you don't remember all of the commands, if you at least start with the first letter, then you have your selection that pops up there, right? And just hit enter for the command that you want to activate that's highlighted there, right? And there's offset. So I want to offset 20 feet. Make sure you use the correct notation there. Enter, select the object that you want to offset, and then you're going to be prompted to select which side, to the left or to the right. Click to the right. To verify dimensions, okay? To verify dimensions, what you can do is you can use your utilities here, and you'll see measure. You can measure distance, radius, angle, area, or volume. Now remember, this works only with your OSNAP settings, right? Intersection, midpoint, or endpoint. So if I snap there, you can see, right, the tooltip, right? Midpoint to midpoint. Now, I have to click there to actually see the results. In contrast, look at this. I'm going to escape and start the command all over, but this time I'm going to turn on dynamic input, F12. Now watch. When I use dynamic input with the inquiry command, look at that, right? It's dynamic. I can measure just about anything, right? It's much easier than all these other additional keystrokes. So I'm going to escape there, turn off the dynamic input again, re-enter offset, and now I'm going to offset the 32 feet. So from this point, there's a variety of ways that we can complete this floor plan. Now, you can see that I started drawing on 0 layer, right? If I use my pull down, here you can see all of the other layers that are available to me. You'll notice that I have some layers above the 0 layer. The 0 layer is just a transparent layer. Nothing should exist on it. You can see that the way that I got these layers to show above this layer is by using a symbol. Okay, that way I can separate layers that I can use just for guides as opposed to layers that I use for model information. Also, later on you'll learn about CAD standards, and you'll notice that all of these are annotated with an A for architecture. Right? So you have the major discipline, and then you have the category of information. So let's thaw some of these layers here that we can use, and I'm going to thaw the guides layer here. Now, in order for selection, right, and modifying objects in your drawing, there's a variety of ways you could do that too. I can simply select. You can see as I go over entities, they highlight, so I know which one I'm selecting. Another way to cancel that, again, I'm going to use escape. I could use a crossing window. So just in an empty area, do a left click and drag the mouse. You can see the crossing window as opposed to the full window. See the difference? The solid window requires that for selection it has to be completely inside of that window. But a crossing window like this, I just have to touch the objects to select them. All right. Now, if I wanted to change the organization of my drawing here by moving these construction lines to the guidelines layer, I can just use the pull down and move them like that and escape. Now, the reason why I did that is because later I want to freeze these. I don't want to see them. But I'm going to use them right now temporarily so that I can trace my walls. Now, there's quite a variety of ways to do this, right? I can use anything from lines to a rectangle to even working with multi-lines. For right now, let's just do it a couple ways here. Let's switch layers. We're going to go to the A-wall exterior layer, right? And I'm going to use the rectangle command. And I can start with the rectangle command down here in this corner using midpoint. And then notice here too, if I use the middle button, the scroll wheel, just wherever you're pointing, roll forward. Don't push, just roll. If you push, that becomes pan. This is dynamic navigation. Push for pan. Roll back for zoom out, roll in for zoom in. You're going to use these quite a bit, all right? Because you don't want to accidentally snap to the wrong point. You want to see it clearly. Now, as I roll back, you can see that using a rectangle, I have 4 lines connected, right? So if I offset, I can just use the 6-inch value, and you can see I can offset towards the inside or towards the outside. And I can continue to do this. As well, you can see that there will be options there at the command line that you can exploit. Now, I'm going to escape here, and I just want to undo this. So using Control-Z, or you can use your quick access toolbar here to undo, right? And just to show you again how you can use something like a polyline. If I use a polyline, what I'm doing is I'm drawing out each line, right? Now notice, if I turn on the dynamic input, you can also see the length, right? You could dynamically see the length, and you could change that, right? See how it's highlighted? When I get to this point, instead of clicking on that other point, I can use one of the options that you see there below. You see that there's arc, and then there's close. You see how one letter is capitalized? Well, to activate that option, just type C and then enter, and you can see that it closes on itself, right? One object. Now, obviously, we can also do this. We can use something like the fillet command, right? With fillet, take a look at the options down here. You can also click on the options in the command line to activate them. So if I click there on radius, I can specify the radius. You can see there it's already set to 0. Now, if I hit enter, I go right back to the command, and look at this. I can use multiple fillets, right? Click on that, and now I can do this. Select each edge to create my intersection corners, right? Then I could select that information and put it on the correct layer. There again is another way to do this, right? But look at this. Once I start to offset, right, what do I have there? I have more work to do, right? No problem, because I can use the fillet command again. Now look at this. I type F, right? And there's the fillet command, enter. Select the 2 edges. I still have radius 0, right? What does it do? It extends to create the intersection. Fillet command is going to be very, very versatile for you, okay? Use it, learn it, exploit it. All right, let's undo all of this again. Come back to this point where I preserve my construction lines, and I'm just going to do a simple rectangle from corner to corner, use offset 6 inches, and offset to the side. All right, there's the basic floor plan. In the next few minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at creating the opening here, and then also the windows. We'll get a chance to take a look at working with groups first. Okay, groups to create the layout of the furniture, and groups to take a look at creating the windows that you see there. Now, if I start up here in this area, you can see that we're 1 foot 6 inches from the corner, and we just have a very simple 3 foot opening, right? If I go tab like this, how am I going to specify that? Well, you can see here's where your construction lines already start working for you, right? If I use offset, I have 1 foot, 6 inches. Pay attention to the notation, right? Hit enter, select that construction line, and offset to the right. Hit enter again, you exit offset, hit enter one more time, and you're back in. Now I can do 36. That's the same thing as 3 feet, right? Hit enter, select that second one, and then offset to the right. So there you go. That's where that opening should be, right? Now, how do I create the opening? Well, all I got to do here is use my trim command. Now I could use that by typing in TR for trim and then enter. The way the trim command works, okay, and you'll see it up here too, is you want to first select the cutting edges. Then hit enter and then select the edges that you want to cut. So here are the cutting edges, and I could keep selecting. Once I'm done, hit enter, then select the edges you want to cut. Okay? And then enter to escape the command. Now all I have to do is close it. So look at this. With the command line, just type L for line and enter. Endpoint to endpoint, enter. Enter to go right back into it. Endpoint to endpoint, and then enter to escape. Now what do I have, right? Sometimes it may be a little bit confusing with all these construction lines, but look at this. Use your layer panel here. You have a button called layer freeze. All you have to do is activate that command, and anything you touch, as long as it's not the active layer, you can freeze it. Right? So you can see what you're doing. Now to unfreeze it or to thaw it, you can just go right back to the layer pull down manager there, find your layer, and click on the freeze thaw button, and there they are again. Okay, now let's go back to the drawing here, and we could take a look here at our windows. Now this is where we first start to explore patterns, right? Patterns. Now one thing is that we've got a number of lines that represent the window, right? We'll get into the specifics in the detailing of how we organize all the line work later. Okay, so I'll just keep it really simple for now. But what you can see there is we have 1 foot offset for a 4 foot window and a 1 foot spacing between each of those windows, right? Let's just take a look at the first one. They're all the same. So I'm going to show you how to create a very quick and easy pattern. So again, here's my construction line, right? Offset 12 inches, right? That's the same thing as 1 foot. Then enter, enter again, 48, it's the same thing as 4 feet. Select that construction line, and there you go. Now, for now, just to show what a window is going to be, is I'm going to use the wall layer to show the sides of the window. So I'll draw a line from there to there, and from there to there. And then I'll switch layers, and I'll use the, where'd it go? A Windows layer there. Use line, and go from midpoint to midpoint. There's the line work for my window. Now in order to make the pattern of windows here, let's take a look at using groups. Okay, right now you can see that these are just individual lines, which means if I was going to make a copy of these, I'd have to select each one of those lines every single time. But what I'll do here is I'll just highlight the line work, and you can see here, if I right click, you have your group option. Alright, that's built right into that context menu. So if I make it into a group, now it's easier to select, right? Just select it like that, and I select all the line work. Well, what about the pattern here? Okay, what do we have as a pattern? We know, if we look at the drawing here, basically what we have here is, let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 windows, each spaced 1 foot apart from each other. So when you look at it, you could think of this as 1 column and 6 rows, right? The spacing would be the distance from the corner of one instance to the corner of the other instance. So that would be a distance of 5 feet, right? Let's come back to the drawing here. So here's my group that I want to array, and here's your array button. When I look at the array here, you can do this dynamically by pulling those grips, okay, or by using the ribbon, the properties right here for array. And this is where you can define it as a normal array, or in this case, associative array, which allows you to change the settings. So watch this. We're going to look at one column, right? And we got, let's say, 5 rows. And the distance between the rows here, as you can see, is 6 for right now, right? So watch this. When I close it, and then I look at it and I think, oh, wait a second, there's a problem with that, right? Now normally you would just go back and erase everything, but look at this. You'll notice, as I go over this one, you see how all the other ones are highlighted? Because it's an associative array. You can see right there with the quick properties, it is an array object. If I select it here, look at that. I can go back and make changes. So instead of 5, we have 6. And instead of 6 feet separation, we've got 5. Hit enter, and there's the changes dynamically, right? Close the array. Now we'll be able to use the same tool as we lay out the desk and the chair. All right, now we're ready to take a look at developing our furniture pattern, right? And I'll draw your attention to this drawing so we could just lay out the desk and the chair. We're going to use a grouping so that we could easily develop our pattern, okay? That's what I'm going to be referring to right now. So let's just go over here to a corner of the drawing, and let's just start. So here, what I'm going to do is use the furniture layer, okay? I'm going to start with a rectangle. So again, I'm not using dynamic input because I want to show you guys some things here. When I start with the rectangle, the first point, and then now before I do the second point, take a look at the command line, right? Now you see a different set of options. So look at the way that you could do this, right? Let me show you now. Earlier I showed you with absolute coordinates. Now let me show you with relative coordinates. So if I was going to make a rectangle of dimension 5 feet by 2 feet 6 inches, how would I do that using relative coordinates? Well, one way is like this. At indicates relative, then it's the x and then the y. So I just type in 5 feet, comma, 2 feet 6 inches. Boom. Now, that's with relative coordinates. Another way that I could do that is if I do rectangle, and when I start this, now notice that you have the option for D, for dimensions, right? With dimensions, then you can input the length, 5 feet, and then the width, 2 feet 6 inches, and then enter. The one difference is this, is that the last click you do is you specify into what quadrant you place the rectangle. That's the only difference there, right? And it seems to be just, you know, 1 or 2 more clicks than the other method. But again, I'm just trying to show you all the options, all right? You'll use the one that's more comfortable for you. Now, we've got a chair here, and you can see it's about 16 inches square with a 6-inch radius on the back end there. And we want it centered and about 6 inches away from our desk. So how do we do that? Well, first, here's what I'm going to do. Again, with rectangle command, I'll start the rectangle, use relative coordinates at 16, comma 16, enter. Now, how do I get it aligned? Well, here's one way. Use the move command. M for move, enter. Select the object you want to move, enter. Now, the base point. The base point is what's the reference point you're going to use to move it from, and then the second point is where you're going to move it to. So look at this. Midpoint, right? To midpoint. Now, I can select it again and just pick a point anywhere, and using polar. You see that green extension line, polar? Just type in right there, 6, enter, because I'm projecting it in the direction where I want to move it to, and then I could use direct distance method, just typing it in. Now, to do the filleting, what I can do is come over here to fillet and type R for radius, enter, input the radius, enter, and then again I'm going to use multiple, right, because I'm going to do it more than once. And now just select the edges that I want to fillet, and then enter. So there you go, there's your desk and chair. Again, these are individual lines, and I can select it all, right click, and make it into a group. Makes it easier for me to manage, right? Now, the thing is that once we've drawn our desk and chair as a group, we want to be able to locate it. So again, if you look at the drawing, you can see where it's supposed to be located. And what I'm going to do now is use a different layer for my construction lines here. So I'm going to freeze these lines. So I'm avoiding confusion now, right? Turn on the furniture guides. And now I'm going to use construction lines to locate this position. So we got, it's up against the wall, 4 feet away from the back wall. So X line, enter. H for horizontal, enter. Snap to this corner, enter. Offset and enter again. 4 feet, right? 48 inches. And there we go. So this is where it should sit. So I can select it, move, grab it from this corner, and you can see there I can use the construction line to align it. Next, I'm going to create another copy using CP. CP is copy. Enter, select the group, enter, pick a base point, and then your second point. Right? Now, I can put it here, but it has to be actually 3 feet 6 inches, right, to provide an aisle. Okay, well, now I can just move it. So type M to move and select the object, point it in the direction, and then just direct distance, 3 feet 6 inches, right? There we go. And then once again, copy, and there's your base pattern. Right? There's your base pattern. Now, to create the remainder, what we're going to do is, once again, pre-select everything. And what I've got here is basically 4 rows and 1 column. Right? So I'll go up here to Array. I've got 1 column, right? 4 rows. Okay? And I didn't use another construction line here, but watch this. If this is not right, which I think it is, remember, because it's associative, I can go back and edit it, right? So I'll just hit enter, and let's just put a line here real quick, and we can offset to confirm 6 feet. Make sure that's correct, right? So everything looks good. Now, the remaining thing that we want to do is add our annotations, and then we can proceed with part 3. So let's go ahead and freeze. First, let's switch to ADIMS layer and freeze those construction lines. Oops. Let's go back. Let's see what happened there. Oh, okay. These guys were probably on the wrong layer, right? So let's see if we can just select right-click Properties, and let's make sure we put it on the correct layer, right? You can see there it's on the Furniture Guides layer, but this should be on the Furniture layer. There we go. Escape, and then we could again freeze that layer. And now we can go ahead and start doing our annotations. Now remember, we got to make sure we have the right scale. I'm not going to put in all of the annotations, but just to show you, we'll go to Annotate here. Let's start with dimensions. Let's just put in the 20-foot dimension here from edge or corner to corner. And you can see the third click is where I want to place it, right? Keep it away from the object. And notice how I'm using the zoom command. So once again, linear dimension to do vertical and horizontal. Notice that's the first click, and see how I zoom in, get in close. You don't want to snap to the incorrect point, right? Get in close and then zoom out to do your third point. Okay? And that's how you want to do that. Now let's take a quick look at leaders. So here you can see I have an A leader. I can activate the leader command with this button. Take a look at the options down here. We want to make sure that we can put the leader first, right? And how do you know whether or not, what the settings are? Well, read it right there. It says specify leader arrowhead location. Or you could put in the text first. It's already set the way we want it. Now, let's say we wanted to put the arrowhead somewhere in here. Notice how the O-snap is working, right? At any time, you can force it to focus on only one. So if I shift, right-click, this is temporary O-snap, okay? If I want to go anywhere along the line, but not necessarily the endpoint or the midpoint, I'll use nearest. Now look at that, right? Anywhere along that line, start with the arrowhead, and then place the leader, and then I could type. Okay, to finish, click outside of that text box. And there we go. Right? You can see that. Now you'll notice that it's kind of hard to see that text, unlike the dimension text, right? So at any time, you can always go back and adjust your settings. So if I go to that multi-leader manager, it's selected there, modify it. Notice here in the content, right? Text color, change that to yellow, and now it's more legible, right? Now lastly, I'm just going to put my name and information here using D-text or multi-line text, right? Here's multi-line. The 2 points you select is for the text block location. You'll want to put in your name, the title. You want to put in the date. And then if you're using the slashes, you can actually adjust it to become stacked, or just leave it. I'm going to just leave it as a diagonal like that. And then put in scale. Make sure you always show scale on your drawings. And this is 1/4 inch is equal to 1 foot 0 inches. Click outside of it, and there you go. Okay, and it's kind of hard to see on the overhead, but there it is. All right, so now that completes the design development. If I do zoom, enter, enter, that's zoom all. I've added the annotations. Now we can just take a look at part 3. We'll do that in the next video.